Good morning. My name is Adam, and I'm speaking quietly because it's Saturday morning and no one likes a yeller. I'm on a quest to become the most prolific reviewer of all time, and today I'm going to review for you a movie called Tron Legacy. This film stars Jeff Bridges, of course, and it also stars Olivia Wilde, and it also stars Garnet Hedlund as Sam. Oh boy, this movie, I'm not going to keep you in suspense. This movie is really bad. It's bad in terms of it just itself, and it's bad in terms of its connection to the first Tron movie. Now, the first Tron movie, also not a great movie, but at least it had some kind of charm about it because it was new. It was like showing what could be done with computer animation. Whereas this movie looks like any kind of movie using CGI from 2010 would look like. And so I kind of felt really divided about the visual aspects of this film because clearly they wanted to harken back to the original, but use our modern technology to show what the world would look like. And so, if you don't know, Tron, the whole universe, is set inside computer programs. So, in the first one, it's one computer program created by NCOM, and the second one is another computer program created by a guy named Michael Flynn. We'll talk more about the character who's played by Jeff Bridges in a moment, um, but basically, so in the first one, the crude animation kind of makes sense because that is what computers could do in 1984, right? So that kind of makes sense. But in the this new world of Tron Legacy, and I think that the movie is trying to get away with this hand waving and saying it looks different because it's a different program. It's a different thing that Flynn created. Um, it looks like, the modern graphics of 2010. So I think it would have been better, and maybe it would be overly, maybe there would be too much exposition if they did this, but it would be better if they had, like, um, if the program was evolving with or in the world inside the program was evolving with the graphic capacity of computers, right? Because a computer from 1989 is a very different beast than a computer from 2010 even. So, but they don't do that because this second world is also supposed to be from 1989. First world 1984, second world 1989, but the graphics look much more advanced. And honestly, uh, maybe computer games were more advanced. Like, and when I say computer games, I mean like the console games and stuff were more advanced. But actually, on a computer, 1989, uh, computer games weren't that advanced. I think graphically. So I don't know. I don't think that there was a big leap between those in those 4 years, but there's a huge leap between 2010 and 1989, of course. So I mentioned the character of Flynn. So he he's played by Jeff Bridges, and in the first movie, he 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 gains control of NCOM because the president or whatever stole a few of his programs. One was called Light Cycles, and the other one was called Space Paranoids. We don't really hear Space Paranoids in this particular story, but I'll go back to the programs in a moment. But Anyway, so he was portrayed as being this sort of like fun-loving guy who liked to create games, and he just got robbed. But in this iteration, he's sort of like this Buddhist combination of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and he's like this bigger than life figure. And I think that they were kind of going towards that he would be sort of like a benevolent wizard figure because they were using this story as sort of like a Wizard of Oz. They're on the journey to the way home, but whereas the Wizard of Oz is full of charm and delight, this is full of plottingness, bad acting, and visual effects that seem, excuse me, but a bit masturbatory, in the sense that they're pointless. Um, yeah, so back to the names of the whole universe is called Tron, and that's a big problem too because Tron was created in the original. He was like a security program, and he was created by one of Flynn's kind of frenemies named Alan. And so in the original, even though the movie is called Tron, Tron doesn't do a lot of work also. Tron is just like there in the plot. I mean, he witnesses Flynn sacrificing himself at the end, but in this one, Tron is still there because and this is kind of retro conning, and I think the problem is that they wanted to remove as many aspects of Tron, the original one, because they thought that those aspects were the things that made Tron not succeed, but they weren't, right? So anyway, they make Flynn create. Well, actually, I don't think that they say that he. They don't say that he created Tron. I think that they did give credit to Alan, but so basically, Tron is stolen from one program, and then he's put in another program. But the whole point, one of the points of the first thing was that the space paranoids, as I said, not mentioned again in this film, was and light cycles were stolen by this Dillinger guy and made Encom a lot of money. Um, so why is that? Why am I even talking about that? Why is that important? Because so Tron is like I guess you'd say now, an antivirus program. He's like a program to protect systems. But in this movie, they say that Flynn, and this is crazy part two, because so the two programs that Flynn wrote were called Light Cycles and Space Paranoids, and so they rename Light Cycles to Tron. So the bit about the light cycles that are driving around is that's Tron in this movie, even though in the first one it was light cycles and it was a huge hit. So I can understand that. I think so. I'm old, so I don't like change exactly, but I think that I don't know why they did that. There's no story purpose for doing that. That's the one thing. The other thing, so there's no story purpose, and I didn't really mention this because I also reviewed the first movie, and I got distracted by squirrels. But anyway, you can check out that video. But uh, the one thing that they don't comment upon, which is clearly an aspect of the original Tron, is that the things that exist in this world of Tron are programs that are being used by people in the real world, these users, right? So, uh, what would so why is that important? So the light cycle game, when characters are dying and like programs are dying, and it also doesn't make sense because how could a program die in the program that it's being, anyway, that doesn't make any sense. But anyway, like You get the idea that these are like gladiatorial games that the users are forcing these programs to do, and these programs can die, right? So light cycles make sense, kind of. I mean, it doesn't really, but it kind of makes sense in the first one because people in the real world are playing light cycles, so these programs are dying in light cycles. But in this version, light cycles is sort of like a gladiatorial combat that hundreds of programs are watching. Like, why? Why? Why would they be doing that? It doesn't make any sense. And the other thing is that oh, there's also this thing where there is an algorithm named Quora, and part of the plot of this sequel is that Flynn has created this new program, this new world, and all of these things are they're sentient, but then that's another thing. Like this totally doesn't make any sense. So Flynn creates this new world, so that he takes programs like Tron, who is sentient, and he creates another program named Clue, and he gives Clue this uh, directive to make a perfect world. And so Clue, they're trying to be all philosophical. So Clue takes it very literally and tries to make like the world like very perfect. So in the first one, part of the thing that was unique about the first Tron movie is that it's a unique take on how AI would treat humanity, right? So AI treats us like gods in Tron, and they're confused by our actions. But in this movie, it's just the trope of an AI misunderstanding the directions, right? Because, you know, it's that kind of like thought experiment. What if you tell an AI to make a perfect what if you tell a super AI to make peace in the world and they decide to kill everybody because that's peace, right? So that's a trope that I don't like. But anyway, back to my original rant. So I interrupted my first rant to rant about something else. But the thing that doesn't make any sense is that so these are sentient creatures, and Flint is really happy that sentient things have just spontaneously decided to evolve in his world. Maybe it is a big step because it's the first time that they were generated, but Flynn seems to think that these sentient beings are better than the sentient beings that he created, right? So that's really really weird, and it doesn't make any sense at all. Which is why, in terms of the whole how this movie fits into the general world of Tron, it doesn't make much sense at all. And I, I I haven't watched Tron Ares yet, so I will see how that fits into the whole thing. But I don't. I think that that's going to have its own separate problems connected to that. Um, the writer of the original movie, who was da 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 Stephen Leisberger. So Stephen Leisberger was a guy who he was really interested in computer animation, and he pitched Disney this idea. So he was the writer, director, and co-producer of the first movie, and it was a commercial flop because uh, people were not really ready for that. But it was hugely influential, even though it was a commercial flop, because I grew up with it, so I think people my age know very well this movie and maybe were a bit traumatized by it. So anyway, when they tried to make a sequel to it, he gave them his blessing, and like people are like, and the writers were like, oh yeah, it was so nice of him, but what is he gonna do, right? I'm like, I think that Leisenberg, he I think that he could have probably come up with a more creative idea for a sequel than what we got, which is completely uncreative and a confusing mess. Um, maybe he could have gotten a little more help with writing it, and maybe he didn't want to because, it's 40 years later. So, like, if somebody asked me to write a sequel to something that I wrote 40 years ago, probably I wouldn't be able to do it. Also, I would have been nine. So, you know, anyway, I got distracted yet again by that rant. But let's talk. So, I haven't even talked about the plot of the movie, which is basically like Sam, uh, Flynn's son gets, you know, sucked into this grid, and he's sucked into the grid because Clue wants to lure Flynn to opening the connection between the worlds so Clue can get out into the world and Clue can, impose his order of perfection upon our world. And you kind of wonder about that. Like, he would just materialize as a human being. So maybe he becomes a serial killer or something, but he's not going to have much effect on the world unless he knows how to, integrate and reintegrate into computers. But I don't know. That's the plot. And basically, Sam escapes with Quora, and Quora is one of these special programs that I mentioned earlier. But apart from the the special effects, which look good, but they're, as I said, they're not really connected to the theme of they don't make any sense with the first one. They have like a bit of the same thing, but it doesn't really make any sense that the special effects would have progressed the way that they progressed in 4 years. I mean the graphics. But I think the biggest problem is that this film heavily relies on Sam. And I don't think that it's a question of bad acting. I think it's a question of really bad writing. So Sam is this guy who, um, you know, he inherits all of his father's money, and in the beginning, they have a little bit of a lot of exposition on television in 1989 talking about, Michael Flynn's son, and uh, that's not how news reports really worked in 1989. They didn't give like 5 minute about that. It was like, this guy disappeared, blah blah blah. This is what happened. Anyway, so it happens in the beginning of the movie, and I'm kind of getting a little distracted by all of the bad things that I can remember in this movie. But yeah, so uh, yeah, the problem is that when he grows up, he's supposed to be this badass playboy, and all of his lines are kind of like things you would expect an action hero to say, like, "Oh dear, oh now we go, here we go again." Like he's 45 years old and he's been subjected to this bullshit all of his life, which is not true. So the writing for his character doesn't make any sense. One last thing that I'm going to complain about, which is horrible. I mean, is the de aging that they use for Jeff Bridges' character, because this movie came out in 2010 and the first movie came out in 1980 84, so it's 30 years later, right? So 30 years later, and Jeff Bridges doesn't look like he looked like when he starred in that movie, obviously. So what they did is they had these scenes where Flynn is talking to his son Sam, and it's supposed to be this nice kind of father son kind of thing where they are bonding or whatever. And for the most part, you can see the back of his head, which was actually a good decision because they show at the end the way they used the de-aging technology to make him look younger. And later they will use that as the basis for Clue. And it works really good as a special effect for Clue because it looks unnatural, unrealistic. Whereas in, oh, maybe it's no, because okay, so Whereas when he's talking to his son, it looks completely unnatural, right? It looks horrifying, this de-aging process. And I just had a thought that maybe they were trying to suggest that Clue was the one who was actually talking to the son, but wouldn't the son be like, "Hey, Dad, you look very different. What's wrong with you?" You know. But so I don't think that the movie was being that clever. All right, but I think Jeff Bridges is an enjoyable actor to watch. He's got this certain vibe, and you know what would be great if there was a movie with Jeff Bridges and Jeff Goldblum. That would be great. Give me a movie like that. Give me a Tron movie like that. They can even be as old as they are right now, and Jeff Goldblum can play Alan. I mean, sorry to the actor who played Alan, but that would be great. That would be the best Tron movie ever. So, if we're ranking Tron movies, out of the movies I've seen, which is two, this is definitely the worst Tron movie. For all of the reasons I mentioned, it's just a bad movie. It's a bad movie that doesn't really uplift the legacy of the first one, which is kind of hard to do because the first one was also not a great movie, but at least it was an influential and monumental movie. But maybe this movie is kind of like Star Wars, right? So I see that there are people who really love this movie too. So it has a cult following. So the first movie has a cult following, and this movie has a cult following. So what do you think? Do you love Tron Legacy? And if you do, why? And if you really do love Tron Legacy, what is what do you think about the first one? And if you love both of them, how do you balance that? I'm really curious. So let me know in the comments down below. If you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of March. Yeah, so that's all. Thanks. And if you're listening on Spotify, please give me a follow. Bye bye.